The following is a clip from the David Land podcast. You can listen live here on YouTube at Mondays at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern, or you can listen anytime on your favorite podcasting platforms. So, we're moving on to the Kyle surprise segment, where Kyle is going to bring up a topic that I have no idea we're going to talk about, and I guess we're going to talk about it. So, Kyle, what do you want to talk about?
I've got a softball for you this week. It's week 1.
Okay.
So, basically,
So you're not trying to get me in trouble immediately.
well, depending on how you answer this,
Uh-oh.
but we talk about this every weekend that we're together,
Okay.
day and night. What does IndyCar need to do to rival F1 in the United States? What needs
Oh,
to happen?
that's not a softball.
That
Oh,
is a
you
softball.
jerk.
No, because we've been over this so many times. You ought to know what to say.
What does IndyCar need to do to rival F1 in this country?
Yeah, we live in a weird time, David, where again,
I
talking about
know,
how
I
I
know.
was
No, I understand why you're asking me this. I've really got to think about this. So I think that IndyCar
because
rival F1. Okay, well,
it's
we'll say
interesting because, like, it's not like we wanna stop the upward trajectory of F1 in the United States. We don't wanna stop or take away from what's happening because it's truly incredible, and it's really fun, with how much F1 has grown in the United States, and, you know, it's as a racing fan, you can't, you know, only follow one racing series. You gotta love them all. So, to have F1 growing in the United States, any form of motorsport growing in the United States is a win. To have any form of motorsports go mainstream like F1 is amazing. But from an IndyCar perspective, there is something to capitalize on here when you have as many people y- in the younger audience, younger than me, uh, being interested in motor racing from F1. How do you show them, and IMSA too, basically any I think NASCAR is realizing this too, is why you see them making changes, is how do you capitalize on younger people in the United States becoming made aware of motor racing through F1? And how do you show them, hey, we do our own thing here in the United States too, guys. We have an open wheel series that has drivers who've raced in F1. How do we show them, you know, that we're the real deal too?
it starts with social media. Like, as you were talking, I went through all of the things in my head of like all of the criticisms that I have and all of the things that I see that F1 does better, quote unquote, than IndyCar. But at the end of the day, it starts and ends with social media. Um, you have to, and part of the problem, I think, is the fact that IndyCar's TV deal is very restrictive. I think that if IndyCar, because what F1 used to be way more restricted than even IndyCar is with their broadcast rights and what they allow media companies, content creators, XYZ, teams, drivers to use in their social media promotions. I think that not only IndyCar needs to themselves do better social media, and that's a variety of forms. I mean, frankly, I think, and I don't want to get I I'm not criticizing necessarily that they did content at like content day, but if you look at the content day video that they did, which I think was a good video, but like the thumbnail isn't good at all. It's like Santino and Benjamin standing in a hallway. It's a short video, which is kind of confusing. Like I maybe understand what they think they're going for there. Is like they probably have heard the college thing that every college professor has ever told a person in a video production class, which is, well, the human attention span is only 5 minutes, which isn't true, especially when you're making content specifically for racing fans. What what I would like to see IndyCar do is not only like make it so like on the much more attention span driven or the short attention span driven platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, you'd like to see them just do more. You want to see them spamming content. I think I saw maybe one or two onboards that IndyCar posted on their social media, on their Twitter specifically. I mean, you have to try to do more than that. And I don't know how many people they brought there. It's tough too because like I know that they've had some trouble actually getting people into the thermal club, believe it or not. So I don't know how much manpower they actually have there, but like you've got to do more on YouTube. I think they need to work on their thumbnails because their thumbnails, if you look at any other racing series, they're way behind, way behind. Um, and I think they need to do more content that is like beyond the grid or even stuff like frankly like we do, which is you have some talking heads stand up and talk about IndyCar, you throw it to some interview segments, show some on track footage, talk about what's new. Like that channel died, the YouTube channel died for like 6 months, between the off season. I mean, they uploaded some classic races, and I applaud them for doing that. I certainly watched a few of them,
They
but
were
like,
uploading, like, onboards from different races throughout the year that I felt like they already uploaded.
yeah,
It was weird.
yeah, and that's not good from an algorithm perspective in YouTube. I can
No.
just tell you that you want to try to limit the stuff you re-upload, or if you re-upload something, you want to make sure that there's like a different spin on it. But yeah, so it starts and ends with social media. But the second thing I'd say is you need a new car because at the end of the day, like social media, which is the number one thing that they need to work on, is a visual medium. And the problem is when you have the same visuals every single year, and you can paint the cars 100 million different ways, but at the end of the day, it's the same car they've been racing for 12 years, and
You're
it's the
showing
same
people the
body kit
same
pack.
thing over and over and over.
Well, exactly. And I said this earlier when we talked about IMSA is like you can never and this era could be as great as some people say it is. We're never going to be able to have that historical perspective if the era never ends. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, I guarantee you that the card era would have gotten terrible if it had continued on to the point where they had one chassis left and they'd run that chassis for 15 years. And, you know, and they kind of did with Champ Car. Like, they haven't learned their lesson from Champ Car. Like, the Lola, to me, objectively, is one of the best looking Indy cars ever. And yet, when it was the only chassis and they ran it for the same year for like 4 years and they just painted it different colors every year, it got boring. So I think that's a big thing too. I mean, you at some point you're going to have to change the cars. You're going to have to change the formula. You're going to have to get some interest in the actual racing side of things. I mean, I think you've got the drivers that are capable
Yeah.
and have the personalities. You just have to get them out there, and that's the social media. And then you focus on the cars. So social media and cars. Those would be the two things. A very long-winded answer.
I think a lot of people would be surprised, and you ask first you have to ask why people are getting so interested in F1. Besides the drivers, it's the cars. I think a lot of people would be surprised how many people say because the cars are awesome, because they're fast, they're new, they're they have that wow factor every time you see them.
Yep.
They're just straight up fast.
And
Like,
it's something to talk about in the off season. You
yeah,
know what I've been watching recently or watched throughout the off season is that Craig Scarabo guy talk on Peter Winsur's channel about what he thinks the next design is going to be for the Mercedes and the Ferrari and the Red Bull. Like it's fascinating to
yeah.
think about. Okay, well they're banning this and they're banning that. They're not going to ban this, and maybe they can do this with the side pods, or they're going to keep this design. Like it makes the off season shorter for Formula One because it never goes away. You know what? This is the other thing because I did think about this the other day. IndyCar is not a year-round sport. That's the biggest problem with it. The NFL never goes away. Even though they're not playing games, they're talking about the draft, they're talking about training camp, they're talking about whether Tom Brady actually retired or not. IndyCar, and this is not a criticism of Pato, but Pato can just go on a 6-week vacation and nobody talk to him for 6 weeks. No one knows where he is. He just leaves and nobody talks about it. Will Power can crash a go-kart and break his collarbone. Nobody knows or talks about it until he posts it on his own social media. Like it's like the IndyCar champion injured himself in a go-kart race and it was like a tree falling in the forest. No one, even at that go-kart race, talked about it.
Yeah.
Like, could you imagine if Max Verstappen broke his collarbone? We would be talking about that for weeks and
Yeah.
months leading up into the season. I doubt anybody even asked Will about his collarbone at the media day. You know what I mean? They probably just no one knew about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
IndyCar's not a year-round product, and that they
You
have to find a way to be that. And I think social media and changing the cars is the way to do it.